I mean, I feel like we've known each other for like 4
Yeah,
years now, and I've always known you as like moonshot Port LA guy.
yeah,
Uh, but I would love to go like I'd love to go way back.
yeah.
Like what got you into storytelling? Like
In general.
where was your start of this is a form I really like and maybe there's a career in that.
Yeah, so high school. So I graduated high school in '99 in a farm town in Michigan. So the idea of how to do it was very difficult to even wrap my head around. But we had cameras, and I goofed around with friends in high school, and we had like a once a month thing that we would do and put up. It was like a half hour, and it was stupid. It was like sketches. It was like ripping off SNL stuff, and I was always an actor in all of it, but I loved it. I just like goofing around. And I was actually my parents hate this, but I was a scholarship engineering student, and I had not a full ride, but I had scholarships at Michigan State, which was where my dad went to school. And during orientation, I just changed it. I didn't talk to my parents about it. I was just like, and they didn't even have a film program, or it was called telecommunications, which kind of dates me because it was still like kind of half like, here's how phones work um, thing. But I knew just from doing my own research and talking to people, like they had cameras and you could take them out and make stuff. So I just switched and literally had no idea what I was doing, like 0%. But then kind of crafted, um, the Michigan State 99 to 2003 version of a media degree out of it. And it was a lot of like live television classes, some documentary stuff, and taking a lot of theater courses because that's where I got to work with actors. I knew
Yeah.
I needed to learn how to do that. But yeah, it was early. It was in high school, and I very clueless about the whole thing. Michigan State was interesting because it has a good film history. Sam Raimi is tied to Michigan State, so there are people that you can look to at the school and go like, oh, he figured it out, and try to map. And there was one guy who was there. Well, he was there before I was, but he kept coming back and doing classes. Greg Harrison, and he had done a movie. It was about the rave scene, and I can't remember what it was called. And he's gonna kill me. He won't see this. What was it called? I can't remember. It was at Sundance actually though, and it was a movie set in San Francisco during the kind of rave era that he made for like 500 grand, and I loved it. And he kept coming back, and he was getting ready to do his next movie um, called November with Courtney Cox in LA right after I was graduating from Michigan State, and I basically begged him to let me like come and be on it. So I worked on that for $1 as a PA. Right after I graduated, I literally packed up like a Ford Tempo, uh, not great car with everything I owned, drove to LA with my then girlfriend, and then lived there for 3 months on a friend's couch and made a movie. And that's where I was like starting to figure out what it was. What is storytelling? It was really traditional.
I feel like that's the most LA story that I feel like that's such a common LA story. I
Yeah,
put everything in a car
yeah,
and I drove to LA and I was going to be a filmmaker.
yeah. With no money,
Yeah.
$0, uh, and yeah, just like learned a lot of hard lessons in that experience.
What did you learn on that project that made you like working for a buck and sleeping on couches isn't anyone's
Glamorous,
favorite thing to anyone's favorite thing to do.
right?
But what was it about that experience where you were like, "Oh, I like
Yeah.
this."
You know what? The thing I learned the most in that, because I was I think every healthy storyteller or young wannabe filmmaker needs to have like a massive ego, and I did at the time, but I did learn very quickly just how little I knew about everything. Like I was helping everybody, but I was getting clowned on by like grips about how I was wrapping cables and stuff like very simple things. And I learned really quickly that I needed to find a way to learn more, and that drove me to film school. I took like that year gap working on that movie, making a short film, and then ended up applying to a bunch of film schools. Didn't get into any. Um, that was actually my first year out, and then I did it again, and I got into Florida State University, which has a really great grad program. Very like, there's nothing to do. It's in a swamp. It's in Tallahassee. So no fancy people come and visit and lecture, but all you do is make movies. There's nothing to do there. So that's where I think I learned at least a little bit more about like the collaborative nature of making stuff, which was great lessons.
what did you learn in film school? Like, what was it? What was it about? Because
Yeah.
like you're in LA, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
you're in like the film mecca,
Yep.
especially at that time.
2000, yeah,
You know,
2003, 2004.
to then jump back across the country and go, I want to go to the swamp
Yeah.
and learn to make movies.
Yeah. Great question. So LA was scary. I mean, my town, I grew up in a town of 500 people. They took the stoplight down. Okay, that's how small it was. They like got rid of it. Um, so the jump from there to Lansing, Michigan State, I was like, oh, this is like a city. It really wasn't, but I thought it was massive. And then just going directly to LA, I was like way out of sorts. I loved it. I made a lot of friends. Um, but I was pretty intimidated being out there. And I also knew and had good mentors. Greg was really available, the director of the movie I worked on. And I just felt like I needed some more seasoning. And I had a big ego, but I needed a little bit more confidence just in the craft. So film school, what that gave me, I could have a lot of debates with young people about the value of film school, especially now with costs and everything. But for me at that point, it gave me community. And I loved that. I'm still, that I graduated film school in 2006. And my closest friends are people I graduated with from that film school. So it was very important to kind of see like-minded storytellers and understand the power in that community and being able to like pull each other up by your bootstraps and be able to like pick each other's brains and just I don't know, experience the storytelling medium together with someone else or with a group of people was really powerful. And at that time, this is 2006, when you wanted to be a storyteller, that was still pre-internet, really. I mean, internet was up, but pre-digital video as like a real medium. So I was just hell bent on like kind of really old school path to directing movies or TV, the end, basically. Because I was never really interested, even then, in there were friends of mine who were doing like spec commercials and like the Doritos competitions and all that stuff. I was never interested in that because I was too like unbearably snooty. I wanted to make like art house movies basically. But yeah, that's what I got out of film school. Yeah,
When you graduated film school in
yeah,
Tallahassee,
yeah,
now I'm like, do you go back to
yeah,
LA? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Hell bent. Hellbent because I had gathered some things that I felt like I was missing, and I had already experienced LA a bit and had a good network there actually for my previous. I was only there for maybe 5 months working on that movie in total, but I made really good network, made really good friends, and I felt like I had a little bit of a leg up because I did experience a lot from like classmates who were nervous, and I was just like, okay, time to go back. Um, so yeah, I bolted. I my Ford Tempo sadly died in film school. We actually used it in one of the short films because it broke down and we needed to crash a car for a film, and I donated it. I was like, smash this one. So now I packed up my Ford Focus, 2001 Ford Focus, and drove I-10 all the way down to LA and started cutting my teeth in a kind of a crazy time period because it was like late 2006. How do I get a job? And the beginning of the rumblings of like financial crisis were starting to happen in that first couple of years, and then it just like exploded. Um, but yeah, and it was a pretty traditional like path being a young grad. I interned John Davis Productions. They did a lot of like Eddie Murphy movies of the era, and he was kind of like an old school. He did Predator, he did like big '80s and '90s movies, and his office was in Brentwood, and I got to go work out of there for a couple of weeks, unpaid intern, um, when they still made you do everything and you didn't get anything for it. I actually pulled my back, like moving furniture for him at one point, and he got on a phone call with me to make sure I wouldn't sue. It was kind of crazy. But did that for a couple of weeks, and then I got very lucky. I ended up getting a gig um, working as a personal assistant for film directors 4 weeks in, and it was a dream. It was really a dream. I mean, you didn't get paid anything, um, but I had 4 roommates, so I could survive. But the access was crazy. I got to go start working on film sets, at the elbow of studio directors and experience really what it means to craft at an extremely elite level, um, in the room, like quiet, a fly, doing a lot of terrible, terrible, terrible work, like a lot of coffees and buying groceries and doing all that stuff. But like the exposure was insane and really learning about. So you think you learned how to craft a film at film school, and your ego's like, I know how to do this. And then you go see what it looks like on, a $40 million movie. And you're like, oh, no, I have no idea what I'm doing. And but then I got to immerse myself for 6 years or so doing that.
What did that experience teach you? You know, you mentioned, you come out of film school, you're like, I know how to do this. I know how to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
a
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
You then see all of these directors sort of
yeah,
in their element, um, directing. What were the things that you were really paying attention to
yeah.
that you still carry with you now?
The crafts people, I think, is the thing that really stuck out to me. As a, uh, I was my whole storytelling. The idea of being a storyteller was crafted by this idea of like auteur directors, like directors from the '90s, um, and so I always put the director on this really high pedestal, and I still do, but I learned very quickly that the craftspeople were like insanely talented and actually more so responsible for how movies like look, feel, the quality of them. And the I also saw directors that position kind of a little bit of the shine knocked off, and not in even a way that's like insulting. I was just like, oh, it's just different than what I thought it was. Like I really thought it was somebody who walks in and tells everybody exactly what to do and like is tweaking everything themselves. And you start to realize it's a little bit more like a quarterback or like a coach almost, who's like just making sure the train is staying on the tracks that they're overseeing. Um, so that stuck out. The post process stuck out is like something that was way harder than I thought it was. Um, I think mainly because when you're making your own stuff, young, you're just in your bedroom, like figuring it out on your computer, or even in film school. It's just like a little bit of a tighter process, shorter process. You're like, yeah, I think I'm done. But then going in and seeing how it works on a studio level with like notes processes and all the screenings and test screenings, and it's insane. It's an insane process to see unfold in front of you and see all the major changes that kind of happen to a movie in that process was wild. Um, that stuff stuck for sure. But yeah, the different there's like an equalizing thing that happened with the big crews, and I think I started to become more. I was gravitating more to the again a little bit less to this idea of these iconic visionary people as like the dream, and more like, oh, the group is so fun. It's so fun to be a part of these folks who get to go make things and tell these stories together. And I started to fall in love with that process more than anything.
So you said you did that for 6
Right,
years.
yeah, I would work. I had this dumb idea where I would like didn't want to stay with anybody for too long. I had a fear of getting pigeonholed into a gig, and I knew some assistants who had been like assistants to big directors for like 12 years, 14 years. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm too impatient. So I worked for three different directors. They all made very different movies. But I would always leave after one movie. I would just be like, I'm out. And all of them, really wanted me to stay. And I just said no um, because I didn't care about security or anything at the time. I was in my mid 20s. And I would just bounce and then write and work on short films and work on whatever stories I wanted to do until I felt the pinch. And then started asking around and find another director. And I was very lucky and very fortunate that I was able to do that 3 times in a row, basically, until I was 30 and realized I needed a real job. I needed insurance at some point, basically.
Well, I was gonna ask, I feel like in that I was curious to to know, like, how were you exercising the creator muscle,
Yeah.
right? You're working for other people,
Yeah.
like, directors
Watching it.
directors work long days,
Yeah.
especially at that level,
Yeah.
so as an assistant, you're also working the same long days
That's
and
right.
probably slightly longer on both ends,
Yeah. Yeah. There
um,
first, last out.
which means you have no life,
None.
right? And
Yeah.
so how are you making things and finding that muscle of your own?
Yeah. So that would be happening in the gaps.
Yeah,
And that's
okay.
why I would leave. And I feel like at the time, I don't even know if it's really possible as much anymore with how expensive it is in LA, but in the time, you would work enough to be able to pull unemployment for a little while. So I would do that. I would work, 2 years or a year and a half on a movie and then leave, pull unemployment, and just go make stuff. Write scripts, make short films, make like music videos for my friends, um, make weird experimental stuff. At this point, some things are starting to happen on the internet, and again, I was too snooty to really take it seriously at the time, but I would still flex a little bit in that space. Um, but yeah, I was able to do that back and forth a bit. And yeah, until my last one, the last movie I worked on was Moneyball, which was really great because it was like the first two movies. I always say I loved everybody that was on them, but they weren't successful. They weren't really great movies. Moneyball was like the real deal. I was like fantastic. I was like, okay, I think I'm good now. I got to see a good one all the way through. Yeah.
And so what was the real job?
The
Like
real
you said
job.
at 30,
Yeah, well,
you're like,
getting into
"Oh,
this
I
whole
need to
career,
think."
really, it was a big shift because at the time, and I still have friends who are on this track who are like, um, still struggling, like directors who've made a few things, but like they're just focused on the writing, directing. That's all they do.
Mhm.
I'm really glad I'm not because that's a tough road, especially when you're starting to hit your mid 40s. But at the time, I had a friend who was a writer, a TV writer, and she knew I was starting to look around and knew I didn't want to do assistant work anymore. And she had heard she had a friend who worked at a company called Full Screen, which was part of this era of MCNs on YouTube. Do you remember
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Okay, so there was Maker, Awesomeness, Full Screen, and a few others. But MCNs were these like house of card kind of companies where they were trying to like pull all these independent YouTube creators together and then like sell their audiences to brands in their own way as like their own networks. So this company, Fullscreen, is brand new. So they had like 25 employees. It was really a startup. George Strompoulos had started it. He came like, I forget what, he was like a first 20 employees at YouTube guy. Brilliant, really smart, great startup guy. Um, and I interviewed to be their head of production. And she was like, you should talk to them because they're interested in a head of production who knows short form and you know how to do that. And specifically, they need somebody who can like make a budget, but won't scoff at the idea of maybe not making like fancy stuff because
Right.
it's early YouTube. And I was like, cool, I'll go in and talk to them. So I went in and it was the weirdest, I'm used to going into like the Sony lot and talking to film people. And this was going into like a startup and talking to a very tech person. And I have no idea what this world is like. And they told me in the interview, they're like, I don't think we're ever going to make anything, but we just want somebody who understands how to do that because we deal with creators and there might be a chance that we make stuff, maybe with brands, maybe not. And I walked out there going like, there's no chance. Like, I don't know why they need someone like me. And I don't speak YouTube at all. Like, I don't know. I don't never on it. Again,
Yeah.
snobby at the time. That's all shed. But yeah, they hired me, and I literally had no producing experience whatsoever. So my first job in that ladder was as a head of production at a company, and I had to kind of learn from the top down, which is a terrible. I mean, you really shouldn't do that. That's not the person you hire because I made every single mistake. I made like little mistakes and big mistakes. The mistakes you make is like an AP or a project coordinator. I was making as like the head of production all the way down, just terrible. But I got along with everybody, and we kind of built the idea of like what early YouTube branded content looked like at the time. And it was, in that way we were kind of cutting edge because not many people were doing it. And this is like 2010. No, 2011. I don't remember. 2011 maybe.
Early days still.
Yeah, early days.
In that role, when did the snootiness start
Go
to
away.
start to dissolve and you start to go,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is a place where stuff can be made and I want to be a part of it."
Yeah. That's interesting. So it kind of happened when I left. So that job was interesting because I learned a ton, and I got to my first experience making like branded stuff. We did like cool campaigns. We worked with Ford, Team Ford, big agency, and got to go. We worked with this creator, Devin Supertramp, who I don't even know if he's around anymore, but he used to be in like Provo, Utah, doing like epic like swings, like tree swings and stuff, just insane stuff. And we got to go make some really weird videos with him, and it was a lot of fun. So we started doing that stuff, and I was like exposed to brand new ways to make things. And I really liked the speed with which we were able to go do that because again, my experience had been coming from big, colossal movies, and it was
18 months.
yeah, it took forever to do anything. And this, we're just like, you want to go up to Jackson Hole and we'll, throw a wingsuit guy out of a hot air balloon and film it. And we figured it out how to do it in like 2 weeks, and we just went and did it. The insurance took a little bit longer to clear, but that was fun. And I was actually riding a lot of the just pure adrenaline of like, oh, this is kind of a cool space because you can move so fast. And I was starting to enjoy a lot of the creator world because it was very nostalgic, kind of to mean figuring out stuff in high school almost, like tapping back into that energy of just like, we're just doing stuff. And it was actually there, I was hiring companies a lot of companies to come in and do some of our branded work. And we had this opportunity with AARP. They wanted to do a YouTube series because they were trying to, like everybody, get younger. They didn't have any money. It's like $100,000 or something. Um, but they wanted to do something trying to find an audience of like 40-year-olds that they would start to like associate them as a cool brand. So when they got a little older, they would consider signing up or whatever. And I had heard about a company, Portal A, where I now work, that at the time was like very young. I think they'd been around for a couple of years at that point, very small, through a friend, Brendan Gahan, who worked at Fullscreen. And I called them and we got down and I just really clicked with the three founders there. That company was very small at the time. I think it was like eight or nine people. And I clicked with them and we made that show and it was very hard. It was with George Takei. It was called Takei's Take. And it was George Takei interviewing like creators and talking about tech and stuff that he might not know about. It was very weird, but a wonderful show to make. Fell in love working with those dudes, and I was just like, oh, these are people I want to collaborate with. And I was getting really bored at Fullscreen, just like building budgets, and I wasn't able to go to as many sets as I wanted to eventually because I had built a whole team and I was stuck in an office. So I left. Actually, Zach at Portal A called and he was asking if I knew anyone to be a junior producer in LA because they were expanding that team. And then I kind of pivoted into a hard pitch that he should just hire a maybe not a junior producer, but a producer, and it should just be me. And we started talking back and forth, and yeah, they hired me in 2013, I think. Yeah, so I jumped over there, and then that's actually where we get on the tracks to like getting to like the brand storytelling stuff. It took a while. I was going the other direction, then I got found these tracks and started riding.
And I feel like that's such an interesting journey because we all know the film industry.
Yeah,
As makers, right? As filmmakers and as people that watch things, like everyone goes like, I understand making a movie.
yeah,
I understand making a TV show. It's hard to wrap your head around like I make films for brands or
yeah,
I partner creators with brands to make like
yeah,
that transition. I mean, it's much more common now that we're like old dudes.
yeah,
Uh, but at that time, it wasn't as common a thing, right?
yeah,
So you jump over to Portal A
yeah.
and you start working there.
As a producer, yeah. So they had Kai, who's one of the co-founders. Their offices at the time were divided. They had offices up in the Bay because that's where they all grew up, and they had an office in LA. And Kai worked out of the LA office, and he's the creative director. And at the time, was directing all, I think, of the things we were making. And Zach and Nate, the other two co-founders, were up in the Bay. So what they were looking for, and we had some producers at the time, but they were also located up in the Bay. And what they were looking for is some support for Kai down here, and we are shooting a lot in LA. So I basically became like the producer in LA. So whenever we had a shoot that Kai was running, I was the one who would go out and help make that happen, basically. Um, and I brought the experience I gained from making all those mistakes at Fullscreen over, and I was able to be, I had a fairly traditional background at that point, and I was 30, and a lot of the people at the company were young. Like, we had a producer in LA, Davey Johnson, who I'm still really good friends with, but he was like a baby. He was like, I think he had just graduated from Chapman at the time. So they just kind of needed someone with some life, someone who'd made a lot of mistakes, basically. And I checked the box. But yeah, and the stuff we were making at that time, it was like, it was funny. It was like brands would come to Portal A, and almost always it was an experiment. They were like, we found a little money, and they were trying to make big splashes and with limited resources. And if it was a big brand coming, it was like an afterthought probably to their main campaign, which at the time was most likely still very traditional. And if it was a really small brand, it was because it was the only place they could play. They were like startup-y or whatever, and they just knew like they weren't going to go make a big broadcast thing. So like, let's go see what we can do on YouTube. Um, and we said yes to most things. 'Cause at the time, we were like small company. So we found ourselves having to like crack a lot of hard creative problems, and it was a lot of fun. That was like and not a golden era as far as like revenue, But man, it was fun because the brands were weird and everybody was really open to doing what's the biggest swing you can take? And that was always just a creative problem to solve.
For you as a former snobby filmmaker,
Yeah. Oh boy.
what was that process like for you of like wrapping your head around brand work and
Yeah.
that being the thing you're creating and taking weird swings on YouTube stuff?
Yeah. Well, you realize kind of quickly how I'm sure people at studios would hate hearing this, but how similar like studio executives are to like brands. They're giving you the same kind of notes. The creatives are kind of throwing the same sort of frustrations at either one, and I got to see that on both sides. Um, so I don't know. At this point, the snootiness was kind of like disappearing fast, and I think it's just because the fun and the speed with which we were going and making this stuff, and just how highly creative it was. Because most of the snootiness for me came from this difference of like making a movie is high art, making a commercial is like you're selling your soul, and those were kind of the only two things when I was coming up. It was like a 30-second spot or it was a movie or TV. And what we were doing was just different. It was like weird. It was very weird. It actually harkened back a little bit more to like the era in the 90s when music videos got super weird. Like Spike Jones was just doing some weird stuff, right? And because music videos were getting kind of stale for the most part in the 90s until there was that era of like kind of really odd new directors who came through and just kind of took a sledgehammer to it. And I was getting a little bit of that vibe. So there was some punk rock stuff in there that I could latch onto. And I was always like the guy at the Port LA like holiday things that was saying like stay weird everybody. Like I was that guy because I got down with that. It was different. It didn't fit into either one of those buckets, and I like that. I like the freedom of that stuff.
In 2013 and those early days of your
Yeah,
Portland career,
yeah,
like brand storytelling or the thing that has evolved into what we sort of all explore today
yeah.
wasn't really a thing,
Not
right? It
really.
wasn't a discipline.
Yeah.
Um, when did that start to trickle into your world as like, oh, this is something we can actually bring some of that art
Yeah.
into the brand stuff and we can make things in that way.
Yeah, we had a really good, strong relationship. I had no part in the early side of this. This was like a Zach Kynate thing, but they built a really strong relationship at YouTube, at the company YouTube, um, and built, and we still have this. It's like, I don't know, what's it, 13, 14, 15-year relationship with YouTube and Google that isn't like, agency of record or anything, but we work with them all the time. And they were able to craft a format that was very popular at the time called YouTube Rewind, which was like the end of the year celebration of everything on YouTube. And it was a mix of music, the biggest songs that came out on YouTube, which were like pop songs, the biggest creators, the biggest trends, Ice Bucket, all that stuff. And it was like its own weird format. It was technically an ad for YouTube marketing. Like the purpose behind it was for us to show brands that you can come to YouTube and make really big, ridiculous Super Bowl level type things, right? So that series was unique. And I feel like that for us was a bit of a brand storytelling thing because it was long term. It had like kind of traditional objectives that a brand might give in a brief. But the way we attacked it was just so different. And it felt like a series that we built. It did, we didn't do much in the doc space really, or in like a traditional, like we're making a big movie or scripted stuff for brands, but we were making formats at that point, and it unlocked something with us a little bit because primarily our work through the year, if that wasn't YouTube Rewind, was like one-offs. It was like, oh, this movie's coming out, let's go make a music video for it or whatever. But with Rewind, it was something that it was a format we built. We did them from, they did two, I think, before I started. So maybe 2011 or 2012 through 2018 is when it ended. And it took over the company for like 3 months, 4 months of the year every year. We just shut down. We're like, we can't do anything else. It's all we can do. It's the biggest thing. Working with 200 creators across 7 continents for a 7-minute video. It's like, how do you do that? Um, it created a whole skill set that everybody who worked on it has probably never used again. It was that unique. But that felt like, to me, very brand storytelling-ish, because it was like that that long-term relationship you make with a brand to create a format that's very unique, and does tell a it's a weird story, but it does tell, like, a story about the brand that isn't as it's not as, like, flagrant as a 30-second spot that just kinda, like, jumps out at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your role evolve as you were, your
Yeah.
early-ish employee
Yeah.
of the team? And obviously, there's been a lot of growth and change and shifts. So,
Yeah.
what was your journey from starting as a producer?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right, because I came in, I was a senior producer, and then I was a supervising producer. I'm gonna mess up some of the titles because 'cause I've been there for 12 years and I have no idea. Supervising producer, so my job at first was, like, really running individual shows and producing it, line producing and being on set, making sure nothing fell through. And then eventually the team grew and we had other younger producers and I was a supervising producer, so I still did certain projects, but I would also help oversee smaller projects that our younger producers would work on. The whole time, I was the annoying person at the company who was always like developing my own stuff and pitching it to my bosses over and over again. That came from a traditional world. And I knew that there was appetite at the company to do more, um, to continue to like find lanes to try and make more traditional type shows. And the reason I know that is the company was built off of it. They had sold a couple web series early. That's how they like figured out they wanted to create the company. Um, they were weird YouTube formats for sure. 5 minute semi-scripted travel shows in Vietnam. Um, like, was that real? Was it not real? You had no idea. Um, but I knew there was a lot of appetite, and we would always talk shop about it, like kind of new ways into thinking about how original series could work on YouTube. And I was always coming up with like ideas because I was still doing I was repped independently as a writer, and I was writing stuff and always like pitching my own ideas. And eventually, when the company they decided, I think in 2015 or 16, they wanted to hire somebody who was like doing more original sort of development. And they brought in somebody, and then I immediately kind of attached myself to them, kind of unofficially until I think I wore them down. They got tired. And they were like, okay, Jacob, you have to do this branded, work, which we hired you to do, but you can also do this over here, this originals work. And we sold a few concepts to, weird brands that don't exist anymore. Um, uh, and it was great. And there's some success points for me to go like, I think there's something here, and put more time into it. And then eventually the guys were just like, yeah, why don't you should just be doing originals. Just focus on it. And that, at Portal A, we're a branded entertainment. We always hated the idea of being called an agency forever. We were always like, we're a production company. We make stuff. Um, but eventually, like, we were doing enough of the agency side of work, we embraced it. We're like, yeah, we're a brand entertainment agency. We are still making everything. We still have producers and editors, and we're coming up with creative. We're soup to nuts on everything. But the agency work is a big part of what we do. We have a lot of strategists. We have a lot of client people. So that's all still happening. I'm still involved in that. But I'm over here trying to sell, digitally inspired shows to networks. And this is like late teens. And we were taking shots at that. And there's the weird thing that's kind of happens when you work at a big branded agency and you're also doing original stuff is the cross streaming is constant, especially when you're talking about the way you're thinking about these things. Is you're kind of we didn't call it brand storytelling at the time. Brand storytelling was happening then, but we weren't really involved. I think I started coming 4 or 5 years ago. Um, our conversations were heavily involved with like we should be mixing these two streams because I was kind of siloed into how do we sell something to whatever NBC, um, while we're making, campaigns, 6 episode format campaigns for like whatever, Google. So it's like we're kind of doing it all. We're having the same conversations. All of our thought process are mixing. We're mixing a lot of streams. Um, and then when we had a really big run with a lot of platforms, digital platforms that had originals teams, and that was even more because they're like, yeah, they're originals platforms, but they're also brands as well. Like, so when you start working with Snapchat and you start working with YouTube originals, and we sold features, we sold scripted shows, we sold, stuff like Steph Curry, like all over the map to a couple of these places. Um, you kind of find yourself almost accidentally like stumbling into the brand storytelling side of things. Um, and then, not to keep fast forwarding or driving forward, interrupt me if I am. Then all those places that I just mentioned, all those like platforms that had originals teams and were buying a lot of stuff in 2022, they just dried up. They all left at the same time. I feel like they all had a meeting together and were like, should we all just leave? And then they all just left. And in my role at Portal A, it was a conundrum because we really hated pitching traditional stuff. We're like internet kids. You know, we like the pace, we like the freedom, we like the innovation. We like just being able to go out and make a thing fast. And we kind of, when all those platforms dried up, we realized very quickly, like, oh, are we going to go back to just doing development? We hated development. We hated the idea of putting work into stuff that 5 people would look at, say no, and then you're like, oh wow, we spent a lot of time, a lot of money. We fell in love with these shows. We never got to really make anything, and we're like maker people. So that was hard. And when they all dried up, we had a real come to Jesus. And for a while, I was like, well, it looks like I'm going to be producing branded stuff again. Like I don't know if there's a role. But after some conversations, and I got to really like hand it to the the leadership at Portal A, the all the founders, we decided to do something a little different, which was create this thing that we're now calling Moonshots. I think we were calling Moonshots right out the gate, but not really officially until like 2 years ago. And the bet there was that we could take all the money we were going to spend on development and just go make stuff. And we felt like there was going to be synergy between all the work we're doing with brands, all the relationships we have with our brand partners, the formats we were coming up with, and and I was still in a lot of those conversations and still get pulled into a lot of like, it's the best brainstorming ever because I'm like a merc. You know, they're like, Jacob, can you come here and talk about something nerdy that I get down with? You know, like we just had, we started working with Lego last year, and I'm a Lego weirdo. So I got to be in some early conversations. It was very fun. But there was like a lot of that stuff happening. And then I got to create this lab where we create the synergy. We're able to go experiment with formats and experiment, frankly, with storytelling with a real focus on digital platforms because that's where we do all of our business. Most of our business and our core business and our branded work is on YouTube, but we still do stuff on, Instagram, TikTok, across the whatever. So I'm over here just going like, how do we continue to innovate storytelling on those weird platforms with stuff that people maybe are just starting to dip their toes into? How can we just go tinker? And we've been doing that now for a couple of years. It's been really wonderful, and it's been, it does. Again, it's like crossing streams a lot, but it's a small company. So if I'm making some weird experimental, like we're doing a series right now for LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn is not. You don't go like, where are they making like a lot of cool creative like IP? Now nobody's saying LinkedIn, but we're just like, oh, we're on it a lot. Like it could be fun. Who knows? And we have friends who work on, are very close with LinkedIn and actually work at the company, and it's a place we know that is going to grow. So I'm able to go and start digging in there and pull people from the, branded side of the work at Portal A into that process, and it just creates a really wonderful kind of fertile breeding ground for ideas at the company about how to like infuse some storytelling elements that we're tinkering with into our branded work. And yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. You know, we've been in a lot of the conversations around the brand storytelling work,
Yeah.
looking at doc stuff,
Yes.
seeing funky creators
Yep.
trying to do new partnerships and that.
Yeah.
What are you looking at right now as things that excite you as
Yeah.
you're working on those sort of moonshot original, how do we play with these ideas?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's interesting because the 4 years I've been coming to brand storytelling, I can feel the shift. Like I feel 4 years ago, everything was not everything. 95% of the stuff that was screened it fell into a bucket of the doc, either short or feature length documentaries, corporate social responsibility sort of stuff, which I really love. I mean, I love all of it, but it just isn't our world. Like our world's weirder than that. It's collaborating with digital creators to do like, cooking shows or whatever. It's just odd. It's just different. So I've been really excited, that this community, the brand storytelling community, is you can feel it a lot this year. Very interested in this, like, how do you collaborate with creatives who have big audiences, big digital audiences, wherever they are, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. But how do you like combine all those forces? How do you take what brands want to do, what they want to do, creators, what they want to do, what creative shops want to do, and filmmakers might want to do, and like mix it all together in a weird chemistry set, and then like have a different version of storytelling come out of it. Like I really loved what Allison from State Farm was talking about, these like long term. It's almost like thinking of these folks like um, Kai is like it's almost like an old school EP that you bring on, and then he starts to like touch on your whole strategy. Um, so yeah, I'm excited. What it really excites me about the creator side of it is it's just where so many people are going to find their primary entertainment, that there's a lot of opportunity. And weirdly, in my experience working with a lot of these young, and I work with them all the time because Moonshots at Portal A, all of our branded work is going either on creator channels, celebrity channels, athlete channels, maybe some brand channels, but it's usually a mix, right? It's a mix of those things. Um, and I'm doing the same thing with Moonshots, but more with like kind of emerging creators. Like I'm identifying people who are doing stuff that's really creative, but will also play in my like weird R&D world, right? That's not like someone with 5 million subs. That's somebody with like 150,000 subs somewhere who gets really excited about me saying like, "Hey, do you want to go make some weird, a cool scripted show on IG for a couple days?" Um, but what I've noticed in working with a lot of these young creators is they want the brand story. They want the same level of craft and the same premium level of like quality storytelling that we see with all of the brand storytelling work. So then we get to play a role as like wish fulfillment people. At least at Portal A, I feel that way every day. I'm like finding somebody who's doing something really cool that makes me feel really insecure about my own creative work, frankly. But then I'm able to bring, I'm able to fill a big gap for them as far as craft goes, or as far as just like pushing them into uncomfortable zones for creating a thing. And we all get to come together, and it is just always a new chemistry when you can find the right linkage, basically. And like, we're presenting this year for Creator Odyssey with Lenovo, and the creator there is this young man in Mexico City, Gox, who is like an auteur. He's like an insane. He is like the Spike Jones of the YouTube generation. He's insane. Um, and we get to go do really high level campaigns with him, like Creator Odyssey, and it is a full wish fulfillment thing for him. But he's also doing something that we and nobody can do. He's doing like a very unique thing, and that's the thing that also really excites me about the space. Is I feel like there was a version of YouTube where it wasn't like frowned upon, but everybody could kind of see what it was craft wise. It was like vlogs or get ready with me. And those are all wonderful formats. But from a craft sense, you were like, okay, I get it. But now you're starting to see the artistry with a lot of creatives on these platforms hit whole other levels where like it's very blurry when you go, oh, was that if I could probably show you clips of videos and go like, do you think that was a single creator or 40 people on set? And you'd have no idea because it feels that way. And that's what excites me. The blurring of those lines, um, the newness you can get from like those weird collaborations. And I actually think a lot of the stuff that the brands are able to push creators to do, if they're doing it in the right way, or creatives online who are just making stuff to do, um, also makes for better, weirder content because it pushes them out of a comfort zone that they might have just making like their really rad widgets, which is basically what they're doing every day. Yeah.
In your experience playing with creators, like exploring this world with
Yeah.
them, um, bringing you know newer creators into the world of bigger productions,
Yep.
bringing big creators into brands.
Yep.
What do you wish more brands knew
Yeah.
about working with creators um, to get the best results out of those relationships?
Yeah. That's a really, really good question. And it's a hard one because it's hard to box them up, you know? Most of the creators that I deal with who are young and emerging are self-taught. They make very specific content that they figured out how to do themselves in their very unique world. Their own little like sandbox that was crafted because they live in a certain region or they have a certain amount of gear or whatever. They were exposed to a certain thing. So um, they're all like super unique. And I think there is a patience that has to come with working with artists like that. And there's also a bit of one of the themes for a lot of our work is there's a lot of trust. You just have to like, there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of trust that has to go into like working with somebody like a Gox, somebody who is self-taught, does really special stuff, but kind of only knows how to do it one way. Um, so I think it's about like loosening up is the terrible way to say it because every brand comes in with like, they have goals. It's a business. They got to figure out how to like get those KPIs and all that stuff, which I totally respect. But there has to be a little bit of a malleability. Um, it's a mix of you have to have your brief in order. Everybody likes talking about briefs, creative briefs, but there's sort of like levels of briefs, especially when you're working with a company like Portal A, or even when I'm kind of trying to figure out the goals for a moonshot and then having to devolve those into like what I'm actually talking to the creator about. There's like the brief that comes from the high level goal from a brand, and then there's the conversation. There's like a whole lot of mixing that has to kind of happen between brand and creator if you isolate someone like a Gox or someone that you just get down with. And then there's sort of like the evolved brief. And it's just tricky to get there. It's not easy. It's not like, oh, but we made a brief already. It's like, yeah, but that's not it. Like that's probably not going to be it that they're going to want to do because you have to approach them at their level and their wish fulfillment is very important too. So then it's about like finding a way to align properly. And the where I've worked with brands that have gotten it and it's been like wonderful is when, there's all this confidence in that brief, but once the conversation starts happening, there's vision about how to adjust a little bit and not break anything. And that's when the magic happens. That's when you get something like, Gox and Creator Odyssey, where you're just like, everybody's floored and just like, okay, how fast can we do another one? Um, but it's hard. It's not easy. It requires a lot of conversation on that level. And then there's a little bit of letting go, and that's the other thing I know brands never want to hear. But truly, there is a little bit of like, oh, well, now you got to let them go do their thing. And if you did all this stuff right, if you did the conversation right and everything worked and you reminded the creator about, a billion times about everything that's really important and give them all the tools to go execute and nail all of the things that you need as a brand, let go a little bit and like let them cook. Like let them do their thing that they can do really well. Um, and that's also part of our job, right? Like as the agency in between is to like, we got this. We're trust me. We're not like they're not in a dark room. We're there to make sure that it's happening.
The inverse of that question
Yeah,
is what do creators or filmmakers
yeah.
need to know or be better at to work with brands?
To work with brands, it's a similar. It's a very similar answer, but it's like understanding that it's wish fulfillment works both ways. Like there's a lot of fun in that, and understanding that, oh, okay, they're bringing something that I don't get to have, and that's fun. And if the creator is good at this conversation part, this in between piece, um, there's something really nice knowing that you have something that they need and want, and that there's a way to get to a place where you can make something that is like going to make you feel extremely fulfilled, and also be of extreme value to somebody that can continue to wish fulfill for you. I think that's what we've realized with a lot of creators where you have more long-term relationships like Gox and Lenovo. We're doing like the third iteration of Odyssey right now. That is a long-term relationship and it's working wonderfully because Gox gets it. He understands what it is. He's not like, oh, this is some like branded crap. Like everything aligns, like the values align. And he has figured out a way to speak that language to Lenovo through us, through Portal A, and speak to us about it in a way where it's like, oh, everybody can actually win in this situation. Like, I feel like when you can understand that there is a way for everybody to win as a creator, as a creative, and it's not like this barrier, it's not a us versus them thing, and embrace the muck in the conversation, which is a hard thing to do. Um, it's really powerful, honestly. And I have to do that with like in the lab, the moonshots lab, I do that on a very small level all the time. I'm like, hey, I have 25 grand, let's go make a thing. And it's very easy for that to be transactional. But what I like to speak is just creative and find the juice basically with all these young, aspiring filmmakers and young creatives. And if you can get on that level with them, it's really wonderful. So yeah.
Love it. Okay, before I let you go, I got my not so rapid fire.
Okay. Oh my God.
First question: what is one story that's had an impact on your life and why? Any medium,
But something I've seen.
but something that's stuck with you. It could be seen, experienced, heard.
Oof.
But what's a story that has stayed with you and
Uh-huh.
why? See, that's why they're not rapid anymore.
No, these are good though. Any story. This is a good one. Okay. This might be a dumb one. Whatever. Um, for me, I'm going to say it's Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, and there's a few reasons. It's an old ass book. It's like a high school book, right? Um, but Mary Shelley's a crazy innovative author who was doing really crazy innovative stuff at a time when nobody was doing stuff like that. And I find it very inspiring. I also find it inspiring that Mary Shelley was doing that stuff, did innovative things, and it's sticky over like a long period of time. It just gives me so much hope as a creative that you can, as long as you're like trying to be a little new and a little weird in whatever medium you have, it's not guaranteed that it's just gonna like fall into the like nobody gives a shit area. Like there's a chance because you're at least attacking it from like, oh, that feels fresh point of view that it could stick over a long period of time.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's one film you
Mm.
think everyone needs to watch?
Okay. Um, you're killing me. Um, what's one film that I think everyone needs to watch? I'm going to phrase it as a way that you could almost use it as a cut. Let's see, because it's going to give me more time because I can delay, I can pause. Um, the film that I think everyone needs to watch is Being John Malkovich. Similar reasons to the Mary Shelley. Hyper innovative, um, very fresh, very weird, um, stands the test of time. Craft wise, stands the test of time. Story wise, um, is so unique you can't replicate it. There's no copycats that I can think of. Um, and it's one of those movies where you get to experience craftspeople and storytellers, I think, at peak energy. Spike Jones at peak energy, Charlie Kaufman peak energy, just like out there roundhouse kicking people. I love it. Yeah.
That's great. What's something you never leave home without?
Journal, my journal. Yeah, I I have multiple journals. I bullet journal and I have like a journal and I have a poetry journal. I don't really do poems well, but it's a good brain exercise.
Yeah.
But I have my journal, which is in my bag over there. Always have to have it. Yeah. And I don't have like a detailed process for it, but I need to journal all the time. So yeah.
I love it. Um, where's an important place for you to go to find inspiration?
Mm. Home. So I am a sucker for nostalgia. And I came up in a very different place than where I lived. I came up on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, and I find whenever I go home, it stirs up just emotional like sludge. Not my childhood was a sludgy period, but it's just like stuff that stays dormant for a long time. And I feel like that rehashing and that dredging it up just creates a chemistry in my brain that allows me to find thrust in whatever I'm doing. And like weird, like, oh, remember when? Oh my God, it makes me think of that and whatever. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Um, what's the most important skill for a storyteller to develop?
Okay. Um, listening to everybody, everywhere, all the time. Uh, and I don't mean like active listening with like a subject. I just mean listening to like the world and the people in the world, and like, oh, you're on a bus going somewhere and there's conversations happening around you. And I just feel like if you are a storyteller, then you are somebody who should be like a magnet for the things that are the human things that are happening around us. And you can only do that if you're like getting a little bit outside of your own head and just like absorbing a little bit. And it's hard because I feel like a lot of storytellers, touched on this earlier, have big egos because you have to think you can do this stuff and to think that your point of view matters that much. And the problem with ego is I think it tends to push people away from listening because you're only listening to yourself at a certain point. So it's tricky.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
That's it.
That's it.